7:07.
This looks like the record-breaking crowd yet. I actually thought it was going to be crowded. Say what? You can click for me. You clicked yesterday? You did great. You were a great clicker.
Yes, she did very good.
Clicker.
They look like they're here for something. They have a question or something, an issue at one time. The couple.
Gonna be about ready?
Showtime.
It's showtime.
Great. 2, 4, 6, 7 people.
All right, good evening, and thank you for coming. My name's Roland Klee. I'm an associate of Mr. John O'Grady, and he asked me to fill in today as the facilitator of this community town hall on the topic of code enforcement. As we begin, I'd like to recognize elected officials and city officials who are here with us. I'd like to recognize Commissioner Avilia Vasquez and Director of Planning and Development Services, Mr. Ron Paradise. So just to introduce what we're going to be doing is we're going to be giving you a presentation on some elements of code enforcement. We're going to be focusing on code enforcement today. We will be having meetings regarding animal control, and they're being scheduled in the near future. So for now, what we're going to do is we're going to have each of the different supervisors of their areas come up and describe a piece of the pie of code enforcement, what code enforcement looks like in Deltona today, what it has looked like in the past, and also what we're looking for in the future. We're also going to be talking about how cases are handled, just the entire process of that. And so, after that is concluded, what we'll do is we'll have an opportunity for some questions. Now, as far as the questions, we would prefer that the scope of the questions be things that have to do with code enforcement in general. If you have an issue with a particular address, somebody has their RV parked on the lawn at 123 Main Street, don't worry. We're going to take care of that with you. We're going to discuss that with you here tonight. But we want to avoid doing that during the plenary meeting here while everyone is participating in this event. So again, thank you for being here. Thank you for your civic engagement. We're going to talk about just what is a code enforcement officer. A code enforcement officer is a professional City of Deltona employee. This is somebody who has been hired by the city, and the city has invested training and time in getting them to a professional status of accreditation that's on the same standards as the other cities in Florida and in the Southeast and in the rest of the United States. They are working for the benefit of the citizens. So the idea that the people here, they're trying to make the community better. And I know I just oversimplified that a great deal. But what we want to do is the chief goal of the code enforcement department is to identify issues where properties are out of compliance and to, as gently as possible, bring them into compliance. And if that doesn't work, then escalate measures. So safety issues, refrigerators with their doors on, things like that. The a fence that fell down and there isn't a property holder to take care of it, and where it prevents an immediate hazard to the community, they go and they address that. We'll be talking a little bit more about that here in a short time. So at this time, please allow me to introduce Mr. Mark Gibson, Code Enforcement Supervisor.
Thank you, Roland. Good evening. My name is Officer Gibson. I've been employed with the City of Deltona for approximately 23 years. My employment started in 1998 as a permit clerk. My current position now is one of 2 supervisors of code enforcement. History of Deltona's code enforcement. So what I'm going to do is give you a brief history of Deltona's code enforcement. We were incorporated as a city from Volusia County in 1995. Although we had become a city, Volusia County was still responsible for code enforcement until 1996. Then the city decided to establish its own code enforcement department in order to provide a better, more efficient service for the citizens of Deltona. At this time, code enforcement issues were governed by a code enforcement board. The code enforcement board was dissolved in 2004, and the city hired a special magistrate to preside over its code enforcement proceedings. Our staffing history, what we have here is a graph to give you an idea of the number of staffing we had compared to the population growth from the beginning of code enforcement to our current staff and population now. You'll notice as the city population continues to grow, the number of staffing has fluctuated. In 2008, you'll notice staffing was at its highest, but between 2008 and 2010, then dropped due to the recession. So basically, this slide is to give you a visual depiction of the rapid growth in population in comparison to the growth of staffing. So at this point, Danny Ron will continue with the presentation.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Danny Ron. I am the Customer Service Supervisor for the Department of Building and Enforcement Services. My department, my section covers the animal control, customer service, code enforcement, solid waste, permitting, zoning, business tax. It's a very busy section of the department, but we handle most of the complaints that come in through our section. First screen that I have here are the top code cases from between the year 2019 to 2020. Big, almost 2,000 cases from one year to the next. This is just another graph, so it gives you a visual of what between 2019 and 2020, and the type of cases we have. The big one is the vehicles. Big jump from one year to the other. When it comes with vehicles, it's not just parking, it's also for inoperable vehicles. Now, this year, 2021 till mid-March, and that's the number so far, that's a pretty big number. And our guys are busy out there, trying to get these properties in compliance. But that's a pretty outstanding, pretty high number, and it's not even been 3 months within this year. Our second category that's way up there is the debris and high grass, which is, we call it lot maintenance. Debris could be the trash, loose trash on the property, the outdoor storage, those kind of things. And just, this is about to hit us, is the rainy season, And I'm definitely seeing those numbers starting to bump up as soon as that, more rain comes in our way. All right, so how does a responsive city government achieve code compliance for the benefit of the entire community? We have different ways to communicate through the city to put a complaint on, on your neighborhood. We have a all day long 386-878-8700. That's our main line to code enforcement. We have a lady there. Her name is Becky, and she takes most of those calls. We also have backup. We have a Miss Patty. She covers the animal control, but she also covers the code enforcement section as a backup. I'm also getting phone calls, so it's busy, the busy section. Another way to communicate with us is we have an app. If you have an Android or an iPhone, it's called My 311 Deltona. Very simple, quick app that you can actually just put in cases for us so we can send out the code officers to address these violations. Another way to communicate through us is through our city website. There's a lot of places on our city website. Contact us if you have an issue or something. Now, let's just say you send it to a different department. If it has to come through us, they'll forward it to us. That way we can start a code case on those. Another way is we also have an email. If you prefer email, denforcement@deltonafl.gov. So it's not just reactive, the complaints driven, but we also have those officers that are out there from 7 o'clock in the morning to 7 p.m., 7 days a week. They're out there. If they see a violation, they'll initiate the code case. Door hanger. Let me go grab it real quick. Hold on. All right, this is the door hanger. It's the initiating notice that we leave at the property. Other names we've given it is courtesy notice. What is it? Warnings. Yeah, so it's pretty easy. Everybody pretty much has a doorknob and it sits perfectly in there. 3 things that are on the door hanger is the description of the violation, why we stop at that location. The other one would be how to correct the violation. And in the very top, we have a re-inspection date. Now, when we do leave these in the doors or at the properties, it's usually 7 days. That's a 7-day turnaround. Give the homeowner or the resident at the location to come into compliance and correct the violation. If you have any questions, there's also a phone number here to give us a call. If you don't understand the notice or how to correct the violation, we can assist you with that. All right, so we see the violation, we leave a door hanger, that's 7 days. Let's say we come back, it's in compliance, they corrected the violation, we close the case out. Let's just say the violation still exists. So the next step we had to take is it's either abatement notice or the notice of violation, and for that, with that notice, we put it out there for 10 days. We give the resident, the homeowner, a little more ample time to correct the violation. But this is the official notice. We actually, it's an 8x10 with all the information of the violation, how to correct the violation, and the time period given to correct the violation. With that same notice, we also send it to the property owner listed on the property appraiser's record. We send that notice certified mail. All right, so 10 days after that, we go back to the property. If it's in compliance, we close out the case. If it's still in violation, the next step for us will be to, the notice of hearing. It's to prepare that violation or that case to go forward in front of the special magistrate. With the next, Ms. Angela Myers is going to be talking about that, the notice of hearing, and what happens in the special magistrate.
So I'm Angela Meyer. I am the administrative supervisor for Building and Enforcement Services and also the hearing clerk for the special magistrate. The notice of hearing we receive from the officer when he noticed that the violation has not been corrected after the both warnings and the notice of violation submitted. Once that is received, you're scheduled to come to the special magistrate that's scheduled once a month on the fourth Wednesday of every month. The special magistrate is a member of the Florida Bar, and he's also a licensed attorney, and he is appointed by the city commission, and he has the authority to rule over code compliances or code violations and assess fines too. His rulings are based on three important things: the gravity of the violation, the actions taken to correct the violation if the owner is trying to improve or to fix the issue, and by the history of the property of previous violations that were reported on that property. The penalty liens, it usually starts around $25 and can go up to $250 a day. And if it's a repeat violation, it's $500 a day, up to $500 a day. I put up a little chart to show what's the relation between the code cases and the compliances. If you noticed, in 2019, we had 8,506 cases, and 129 are scheduled to go to the magistrate. 118 come to compliance right before the magistrate, the hearing. So people tend to correct the violations before going before the magistrate. And only on 11 cases actually get fined because they didn't correct the violation, even though the magistrate give them time to correct that. There is something important about the magistrate is that he will listen to what the city presents, and he will listen to the violator or the resident, and he will see what are they trying to fix the issue, if they're trying to work on that issue, and he will decide about the fine. And a lot of times he gives enough time for the person to correct. Like if you say, I think it's going to take me a month at least to fix this, he will give that time for you to fix the issue. So he's very concerned about the needs and the residents, the location of our properties. And another thing that's very important is, if you notice, that 98.5% of the code cases come to compliance, and only 1.5% continue in violation. So yes, it seems like we tend to correct our violations on our own. Sometimes you just need a little bit of what directions to take, and that's what our job is for. Roland now is going to speak about the code enforcement now and our future.
Thank you, Angela. So, and that's a very telling graph there. If you see the green bar represents the cases, and the blue bar actually represents the ones that were scheduled to go to a magistrate case. So, very illustrative there. So, and I'm filling in for one of the code enforcement supervisors who wasn't able to be here today, but he wanted to talk about where we had been in 2007 as just as an introduction, a ramp up of as to what we see the future of code enforcement to be. So in 2007, in 2007, 2008, 2009, the entire globe wound up going into the Great Recession. Everybody received an impact from that. but especially municipal governments, they derived a great deal of their operating capital from property tax receipts, and then a lot of people just abandon their homes. And abandoning your home usually means that the home will, also just due to neglect, wind up having more code violations, things that are just not put together. I was telling my wife that, I don't do anything to keep my fence up, but I know if I left for a month, it would just fall down. So we saw in the previous section that the staff had gone from 22 down to about 16. So when they were squeezed like that, then they went from being able to go out and proactively seek code cases and code violations to purely being reactive. It's like, here's all the complaints coming in. There's 2/3 of you now, and we'll get to those. We'll do some proactive work if we get through the complaints that have been called in. So that was the situation at that point, at that time. If you'll see in 2008, when staffing was high, that there were 16,000 code cases. So that's a combination of reactive and proactive cases. And then in 2020, because of reduced staffing, you have both a combination also of proactive and reactive cases there. You see that the population has grown significantly while the number of boots on the ground has gone down. So what the future of code enforcement is, it appears to be going to be data-driven, and it's also going to involve a collaboration between multiple departments in order to get the solutions. Community partnerships are also going to be vital moving forward, and that's one of the reasons why we've been taking this, we've been holding these town hall meetings, is the feedback that we receive at these meetings will eventually be presented in City Council. They'll be compiled into a report. And we also want to do, we also see that community outreach programs, getting people aware, educated, and not going into violation in the first place is one of the best things. And following the best practices that are being employed in other code enforcement units and departments around the state. So no one's expected to just reach compliance. People sometimes have barriers, and our code officers work with numerous agencies, more than what's listed here, in order to help people. Sometimes what we're doing when we're finding a code violation is we're identifying some other need in the community and things that other people are best equipped to assist them with. So we use outside partnerships in order to use community programs to help people reach that point of compliance. Examples that were used were an elderly person who just can't afford to and can't mow their lawn. So we're also seeking other community programs that code enforcement can work with here in the future. And so in Deltona, code enforcement, under their umbrella, they're aligned with animal control and solid waste, and the officers work seven days a week. Earlier, when we mentioned best practices, this is what is being adopted as one of the best practices, one of the most efficient ways for government to work. So instead of there being a problem and having one department respond, another department respond, and yet another department respond, instead you have somebody who's able to respond and is able to get the ball rolling on all of those other issues at the same time. And code enforcement doesn't pretend to offer the solution to every single person's problem, every community's problem, everything like that. But they're here to help. They're enforcing the codes and ordinances that were enacted by your elected leaders. So they're out there doing that for them, and their goal is to keep an orderly, safe, and beautiful Deltona. And here's a shot of the officers that are proud to serve the citizens of Deltona here. So, anything else, guys? At this time, we'd welcome any code enforcement questions.
I think the question will be for Mr. Ron. When a case is closed, will you get a notice of the case being closed?
No, you don't. But you could always call or reach out to the officer that has the case. We're looking for compliance. If it's not in compliance, we'll definitely make the contact. A lot of people do like having the response say, hey, am I in compliance? But for the officer, they just move on to something that they still have open. But if you feel free to give us a call, if you think you still have the case open, or if you still have any issues, give us a call, or the officer that's been assigned to that case, and we'll take care of that.
Okay, will that be something maybe in the future that can be provided for the residents? And I'm just going to say my case. There was a letter sent to my landlord, and she was asking me after everything was in compliance if she can get a letter stating that it was in compliance, because she wanted to make sure, I received a letter that this is not in compliance. Can I receive a letter now that it is in compliance? Maybe that was something that you guys would like to do when you're sending it to a landlord.
Right.
To let them know, hey, your resident or the person living in your house, it's in compliance.
We could definitely look into that. That way, and after report saying, hey, okay, everything was good, closed case, case is closed.
Thank you so much.
No,
Mr.
thank you.
Gibson, can you make a note of that for me? So we put, thank you, appreciate that.
Thank you very
Very good
much.
question.
I used to be very deeply involved when I lived in Maitland with the Maitland Code Enforcement in the City Hall. And we had permits that we had to get when we ran a business from our home. Now, I was a graphic designer. I never had customers come to my home. I went to their office, but I still had to get a permit. Is there a way that you can do that for other people that are working from their home? And can they park their commercial vehicles behind a gate?
Oh, well, we do have, it's not a permit, it's a business tax receipt. You're allowed to run a business out of the home, but it's only for an office. You can't have employees, you can't have traffic going in and out of the house.
That's same in
It's a residential area, and that could
Right.
affect the neighbors. We don't want that to happen. But you can have a business out of the home as long as it's an office, but you also have to have a license.
Yeah,
and it's not a permit. We call it a business tax receipt.
Yeah, there's people that don't live too far from me that are actually doing car repair work from their home.
Well, car repair, that's a no-no.
That's a big no-no.
But definitely, at the end of this, let us know where the location, and we'll have somebody go and investigate it.
And I had another question, too. A friend of mine wanted me to ask this. I thought she would be here today. About, there's a lot of rentals. I live right in between two rentals. I own my home. And that's great. I mean, they're great people. But the landlords are not keeping up the property. We're seeing them kind of going downhill. They need painting, they need woodwork replaced. The yard's mowed, but that's it. And I don't blame the renters. I blame the landlords.
Right. They're the...
Is there like a 10-month or 12-month moratorium the city can investigate? And whoever moves in, that the city would have notice of who's living there and how they're doing? Because we also had next door a guy selling drugs. So we got to stop, we had that stopped. And as far as 2007, when people were losing their houses, I'm the crazy lady who contacted the city and complained about the raises in property taxes in 2020, and thank goodness was canceled, because I had 3 neighbors that left their houses, and they were not renters. The people behind me, she deserted her house, gave it back to the bank. So it was really a bad time for taxes to be raised.
Okay, in reference to the, if I'm understanding your question correctly, the first part, we do contact the landlords. Normally, if there's a cold case there, we'll send certified letters that goes to the homeowner, and the landlord is contacted as well. So at that point, that's one of the ways we try to establish contact in order to get voluntary compliance,
Right.
as far as to get it cleaned up or whatever. So a lot of times we do notify the landlords as well. So,
I want to add something.
go ahead.
Yeah. The city manager mentioned this on the meeting from yesterday. It's in the works to do a rental ordinance. We did have it years ago for a short period of time.
2008.
Yeah,
Around 2008.
2008, yeah.
Around that
And we're looking into setting that up again. Put these owners accountable for the properties, for these renter houses because we deal with a lot of the renters houses. The percentage is more the rental houses than homeowners. And it makes it easier if the homeowner knows what's going on and we have some kind of contact information with them. Most of the time, they don't update the property appraiser's record, and that's where we have to send the notices to. But they return unclaimed. And guess what happens? We have to do the whole process, and it goes to the special magistrate, and we still wait. Time lapse, the violation still exists, and sometimes all we can do is put a lien on the property, and that's not what we want. We want those properties cleaned up and maintained, and
Right, it's bringing down my property value.
Yep.
When they're not painted and they're falling apart, I mean, and I keep mine up. I do have some suggestions for road work too, but that's probably a different department.
You'd also asked a question about commercial vehicles?
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Well, it depends on the size of the commercial vehicles. It can't be over 10,000 pounds. Are you talking like a van or?
anything that has the name of business on it?
Yeah, you can. Yep. Yes, ma'am, you can have it on the on the driveway, yes.
So piggyback on her question, when someone abandons their home and the bank takes over, but the bank doesn't do their part, do you also send letters out to the bank letting them know they have to mow the grass or do an upkeep?
right. In our process, when we do the mail out, we also do a search if the property is in foreclosure. It's called lease penance. So on that lease penance, there is a listing of the attorney, and it's handling the lease penance, the foreclosure. We send a fax to them. They get the same copies. The bank gets the copy also, and the property owner that was still listed on the property appraiser's record. There is an organization that kind of helps trying to make contact with these banks, and we have access to that. We also send them a listing of the violation for that property. So hopefully maybe the bank has a property preservation section that can actually go onto that property and maintain it and keep that maintenance going until a new owner shows up. And we also have one of the notices. It could be either the notice of violation or the abatement. The city can actually go on there after the proper time has been given to go and abate the property, which means cut the grass, clean up the yard that's visible from the front.
Okay, and then you mentioned that you have somewhere where you send a list of those things to someone in the community, and it goes into another question I have. So one of the Rake, Florida, Vine, SHIP, United Way, Volusia Hoarding Task Force, and then a suggested community program that you could work with. Would that community program have to have a 501c3 and a business tax receipt? How would you go about if there was a suggestion for a community, a program or entity that wanted to come in and help out someone and it wasn't on your list?
One of the slides had some of the organizations that we reach out to try and assist citizens. Sometimes you have elderly citizens or citizens that's unable, maybe have some medical conditions, I think. So those are some of the organizations that we'll reach out to and try to help them with the process. There's also, our goal is to obtain voluntary compliance. So a lot of times when we open up a case, it's just as simple as making a phone call to the officer that's handling that case, because, you know, we grant extensions if need be, you know, so once you explain your situation or whatever and stuff. So, and even if you don't get per se granted an extension by one, you can also speak with myself, who's one of the supervisors, or the other supervisor for code enforcement. So as far as them they don't necessarily have to be a 501c
C3?
that you mentioned. You know, even if you just got a group of people in the neighborhood or a church that want to help them out, you know, we do try to work with the citizens as much as possible.
Okay. And then I do have another one. When it comes to the best practices that you say that you're trying to model off of other cities or counties, so what are they? What are the best practices that you have in place at this moment? And what are the best practices that you would like to implement?
And what we've mentioned so far is combining, you know, code enforcement, solid waste, animal control. That's an accepted best practice. We've also stated that having people responsive 12 hours a day, 7 days a week is a very progressive and good best practice. And there's several others that the gentleman that I'm filling in for is like an expert on those things. And, you know, I'm not fully aware of all those things that are out there, but the thought is being placed into those things of being able to use predictive means to take care of problems before they start.
Hi, good evening. My question is in reference to vacant lots. Obviously, there's a lot of those here in Deltona. Who is in charge of maintenance of vacant lots? For example, right next to our house, we have a vacant lot. We looked up the owner, and a name came back, but it's in Germany. Was it Germany? Yes, in Germany. But totally overgrown animals, everything living over there. Who is responsible for vacant lots?
The homeowners, I'm not the homeowner, but the one that you contacted in Germany, the property owner, that's what I'm looking for, is responsible for taking care of that lot. So there's a couple questions that goes along with that. If it was left in its natural state, it's allowed to be left in its natural. If it was in its natural state, now for instance, if you went there and cleared the lot out and so forth, and then let it become overgrown again, what is it, 6 months to a year? I don't have the exact amount of time, but then let's just say it gets overgrown and all out of control. Once you've maintained it, it's required that it's kept that way. If it is allowed to be in its natural state as long as it was left that way from the beginning.
heard trash? I think I heard somebody say trash. They, oh, no. Definitely give us a call because that is a code violation. And what we do is we send notice to the property owner for that vacant lot. And yes, now the time limit is a little bit different because nobody's actually living there. So we get a little more time to come in compliance, but we can actually go on that property and clean that out. But this is just trash and debris, but nothing of the natural stuff, which is like the trees, the branches, none of that stuff. But yeah, the trash that was not there before shouldn't be there, and we can actually go in there and clean it up.
It's still required to be maintained and kept clean. So we have an abatement process that we can also utilize for vacant lots as well, which we will notify the property owner. They can be in Spain. We'll get notified if it doesn't come into compliance by the time that's allotted on the notice of abatement. We contact the contractor, and we still go and clean it up.
Thank you, guys. I mean, this is awesome. We started, or I, used to have a lot of town hall meetings right here in this room, and we started inviting members of our different departments so that every resident, can understand what each department in the city responsibility was and who to go to. But the pandemic came around, so we had to stop it. So this is awesome that, we're bringing all our departments out to the residents so you can ask the questions. Just to piggyback on that last one, Mark, the city is still responsible for the right-of-way, even though it's a vacant lot, right? So if there is overgrown by the road, you can contact the department and they'll come take care of it. So I know I introduced myself to most of you. My name is Commissioner Maritza Avila Vasquez, depending on what kind of accent you want to use. If you want to use a Spanish accent, then it's Marixa Avila Vasquez. I just want to let you know that we have awesome staff. We have an awesome code enforcement department, and they're out there doing the job that they're told to do. We want to ask that you please work with them, and they'll definitely work with you. As it was explained, they're willing to work on any problem you have and give you the opportunity to correct the problem and even the help. The city's willing to help correct the problem. We just want to make sure that you want your property to look perfect and as clean so that your value can increase instead of going down because of somebody else's negligence. So please make sure to call the department as they were told you, and I'm always here to call as well if you need to reach out to me. If I don't have an answer for you, I will get you an answer. Usually I direct your questions or your concerns to our interim city manager, Mr. Peters, who's sitting in the back right now. And Mr. Peters makes sure that it goes to the correct department to address your concerns. I have my card. If you didn't get one, please, I'll give it to you before the meeting is over. And if you have any questions, feel free to come to me today, tomorrow. Send me emails. Don't worry about it. If I don't get back to you immediately, I will definitely get back to you, right, Terry? Again, this is your city. And one of the things that I spoke to our interim city manager about is I've been here 21 years. And one of the things that we did back then, and I know that a lot of you have been here quite a few years, is that we used to have the beautification project. And we used to go around. I used to help being part of the Deltona Civic Association, which is no longer in existence, but it used to exist. We used to go around, drive around Deltona, and find the most manicured, well-maintained lawns in front of homes. Mark, I think you were part of that. And we used to give an award and put it on time, put a sign in front of the home, beautification home of the month. And so I spoke to Mr. Peters about this, and I want to start doing it in my neighborhood. I already spoke to Ace and Lowe's to see if they want to come in and partner with us on this. and see what else we can do. And that would also encourage and give the residents a little push to take, much better care of their home, because who does not want to have this beautiful sign in front of their lawn that everybody drives by and says, oh, wow, look, that's the beautiful lawn of the month. So, this is one of the things that we can try to put together here in the city of Deltona, but give us a little time. The pandemic has limited the city to a lot of things, slowed us down a little bit. We also have to be careful with our staff, so to keep them safe. But I'm putting it out there, we have a great staff here in the city, and they're out there to help you. So please, anything you need, anything you want, make sure you reach out to us. Our interim city manager, Mr. Peters, always has open door policy, as we all do, to speak to you and try to resolve your problems. So with that said, thank you so much for coming out. For those of you, and I think everybody here lives in District 3, Monday at 5:30, we're having a CRA meeting. I welcome you, and the CRA meeting is about the upcoming or future planning of Deltona Boulevard, Normandy, some sections of Normandy, which has been in place for many years. With the help of staff and Mr. Peters, hopefully this will come to place. So please, if you're in District 3, come and support this meeting at 5:30. Thank you. Mr. Peters, did you want to say something? Mr. Peters, did you want to say something?
She asked if you want to make any remarks.
No, ma'am.
No?
I'm good. Staff did a wonderful job tonight.
Okay, thank you. If you want to speak to staff on the side, you're more than welcome to do it.
Thank you, Commissioner. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Same here. A pleasure to meet you.